All right, welcome to Del Macaro and Hook Enlightened Dissent. I am Steve Hook. It is a pleasure to be back with you again. It's also a pleasure to welcome back my buddy Tom Del Macaro. Tom, hello, sir. How are you? Good to see you, my man.
Good to see you. Not too long. We're going to have a presidential election, and I'm looking forward to our guest today, my friend Devin Nunes, and I'm sure he's going to be unfiltered.
Yeah, that's what we like. Devin Nunes, unfiltered, former House chair of the Intel Committee. And of course, now I think he's the CEO of Truth Social, among others, the whole Trump conglomeration there. Listen, I want to talk. First of all, can you believe that we're 11 days away from the 11, 10, 11? I don't even know how many days it is, but less than 2 weeks from the election. Boy, this snuck up on us.
And no matter how much money you raise, you can't buy time.
That's a fact. Now, I want to jump into some audio clips, video clips here, because I want to get your take on this. Panic has set in. There's no doubt that panic has set in. In the halls of CNN and MSNBC and all the alphabet networks, they are freaking out. I want to play a clip here. This is Harry Enton from CNN going over the battleground states, what it looks like now, and also the national polls. Pretty telling here. Check this out.
Center of the electorate, you go last time around, Joe Biden won these voters by 11 points. You look at September of 2024, a month ago, Kamala Harris was up 5 points among independents. You look now, though, look at this. She's only up by 2 points among a key bloc center of the electorate, down 9 points from Biden was at the end of the 2020 campaign. Of course, this is a national picture. This is a national picture. What is going on in those key battleground states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, the Great Lakes, that blue wall, right? Joe Biden last time around won him by 5 points over Donald Trump. Look at where we are today. This is the type of movement Donald Trump likes to see in the center of the electorate, up by a point. Now, of course, that's well within any margin of error, right? But again, it's the movement. It's the trends, Mr. Berman, that we're looking at. And when you flip a group from going +5 Biden to now +1 Trump, that's the type of movement Donald Trump loves to see, and it's the type of movement that I think gives Democrats some agita.
Some agita. Yeah, that's one way of saying it. And you know, one thing that stuck out to me at that clip was he talks battlegrounds. He only mentioned 3 of them, didn't he? He didn't mention Ohio is gone. Florida is gone. Pennsylvania is looking like it might be gone or very close to it. What's your take on all of this, Tom?
Yeah, well, here's how I'm looking at the race now. And there's like 6 or 7 items that I think are really important. And then one of those is how independents have changed. But let's start with this. The reality is for the Democrats that the reason why they're panicking is their internal polls, which are being affected by a number of issues. One of those is that consumer confidence took a big hit in September. Generally, in the olden days, 20 years ago, come June, if consumer confidence was shaky, the party in the White House had a lot of trouble. In September, it took another dive. They're in trouble for that. Wrong track. That's in the mid-70s. That's a high number historically. If you're on the wrong track, that's bad for the party in office. So those are 2 non-poll things that show up in the polls. And the trend, he talked about the trend. Number 3, this is the issue. All the polls are trending towards Trump, whether it's the New York Times, Fox News, or otherwise. It may be that they're at different numbers, but they're all showing that particular movement. And that generally winds up in that person this late in the game winning, because how do you turn that around? You're going to talk about a October surprise later, but the reality is the polls are moving in Trump's direction. Also, where are they fighting? You mentioned he only talks about these 3 states. By and large, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have been behind the blue wall. They have been in Michigan, where some polls show them behind. They're not expanding the map. Trump's expanding the map. Now let's look at what the U.S. Senate race says about this presidential race. The Real Clear Politics average polling for the Senate shows 51 in the Republican column and 5 toss-ups, meaning they could get as high as 56. That shows that the Democrats are in trouble, not just in the battleground states, but in other states as well, which speaks well for the possibility of Trump winning the popular vote. And the stories, what are the stories? The stories of the Democrats are in panic. The story isn't about the Trump campaign in panic. You put all of those things together, and I'd rather be Trump right now than Kamala Harris, but then I'd rather be him than her always.
Yeah, the blue wall is crumbling. I mean, and it's obvious and it's apparent, and it's freaking all of them out. You mentioned the October surprise. We might as well get into that because Hillary Clinton played a part in unveiling the October surprise on CNN the other day. And the October surprise, which is no surprise, Trump is Hitler. So he's got a big rally coming up at Madison Square Garden. That by the way, that rally sold out, even though it's free. But I mean, all the places were spoken for in minutes. So it's going to be huge in Manhattan. I want you to hear Hillary Clinton, though, speaking to Caitlin Collins on CNN. This is the kind of despicable. This is, I think, her deplorables 2.0 moment. But I'll let you be the judge. Here's Hillary Clinton now.
You know, Caitlin, I do. And it's not only people like former Chief of Staff Marine General John Kelly who is telling us this and warning us. It's people who have really studied what fascism is and what fascist leadership looks like. People like Professor Timothy Snyder, people like former Professor Paxton, who just recently came out and said that he had studied fascism during the war, particularly the Nazis, Vichy France, and he'd been reluctant to use the term. But he had concluded, as so many people now are, that sadly, here in America, the term fits. And, you know, one other thing that you'll see next week, Caitlin, is Trump actually reenacting the Madison Square Garden rally in 1939. I write about this in my book. President Franklin Roosevelt was appalled that neo-Nazis, fascists in America were lining up to essentially pledge their support for the kind of government that they were seeing in Germany. So I don't think we can ignore it. Now, it may be a leap for some people, and a lot of others may think, I don't want to go there. I don't want to say that. But please open your eyes to the danger that this man poses to our country, because I think it is clear and present for anybody paying attention.
Good Lord.
Okay, well, so for anyone who paid attention to history books, there were no neo-Nazis in 1939. There were Nazis, and they were socialists. So let's go down the list. The Democrat Party today supports or has enacted all of the Socialist Party positions that the Socialist Party in America had in the teens and the 20s. Nazis censor. I'm sorry, which administration has engaged in censorship or the bullying? That would be the Democrat Party, right? The Nazis jailed their opponents. Okay, last I checked, they aren't only trying to jail Trump, but Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon, and others. So on this issue of who is a fascist or who is a Nazi, well, it seems to me that the actual people doing the censoring, doing the jailing, being socialist happens to be certain Democrat Party leaders. I'm not saying the rank and file Democrats, but I'm saying certain leaders. But you used the word earlier, so let's use it again. They're in full panic mode. And people want to like their leaders. And Gallup has Trump at 50% at this moment in time. If he's at 50% or more on election day, he wins. Because what the final approval rating is on election day mirrors what percentage of the vote you get. It's people on that day saying, yeah, I approve of him, I'm voting for him. And he's ahead of her, and I don't see how she makes the comeback if there isn't shenanigans.
Shenanigans being the key word, of course. And yeah, they are definitely in full-blown panic mode. They are also, and you touched on it, Tom, they are projection artists. Everything they're accusing Trump of doing, they've done. You mentioned Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon. Good, we can go right on down the list. You've also got Roger Stone. You can throw him in the pot. Paul Manafort. I mean, if you're
and spying, they spied on journalists during their period of time under Obama, AP and others, and somehow Cheryl Atkinson, and somehow that is no big deal. So this is pure projectionism, but they are left with, in the end, the winner is usually who people want to vote for because they feel good about that person.
Yeah.
They have nothing on Kamala. Kevin McCarthy says they've spent $1 billion so far, but most people couldn't name more than one thing that she wants to do on election day. Although I don't know if you noticed, she recently came out with her to-do list.
But people don't know it because she doesn't know it.
Yeah, but so think about that. They spent $1 billion, and all they can say is she's going to do a socialist policy of price controls.
Yeah.
So yeah, they are in this full panic mode, and you saw on CNN the other day those critics saying that she hasn't closed the argument or she hasn't won the argument yet. And I don't know that she can, because she has so defined herself as unwilling to do this. And if you just indulge me for a second here, leadership needs to be thoughtful, but it must be decisive. And she is not a decisive person. I knew this a decade ago. Everybody knows this. She doesn't have her own intellect with a strong magnetic pole of thought that she can rely on. She has to rely on others. She equivocates. She's insecure. And she is not decisive. And you cannot have a president of the United States who isn't decisive. You can have one who's thoughtful, who has smart people in the room, who listens to all sides. But an indecisive leader is pure danger.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly right. I mean, she does always seem to kind of stick her finger in the air, and she takes on a different accent depending upon which crowd she's. And I think all of this is starting to come to everybody's starting to realize it. But I just want to we have one more clip, and this is more for entertainment purposes than any, because as we've talked about this media panic, I want to give you folks, this is an example of panic in real time. Mika Brzezinski on the Morning Schmo. Listen to Mika. Listen to this abject panic in her voice. This is great.
As important as Trump's fascism is, and is the lead story every day, his cozying up to dictators, his obsession with Hitler that has now come out, what he has said about our veterans, and what he wants to do with the military against his political adversaries, it's all huge news. This is the future that we're looking at in the next Trump term, if there is one. But this is what voters know right now, that he is killing us. I'm talking about us women. He's killing us. He is putting us at risk. He is making us afraid to have babies. He is putting our reproductive health at risk, and some women have died already because of this. So we can see right now what's coming. These headlines, and very good reporting, by the way, that shouldn't be questioned by idiots about what Trump has said about Hitler, that's incredibly important to know. But I do understand that people who are busy and that are people who are just tapping in may not be able to comprehend, because we've been free. We've been comfortable. We cannot comprehend that. And I understand that. I validate that it is hard to go from here to there. It is where we're going. I hope we don't find out the hard way. But what's happening with women right now is real, and it is playing out across America.
Boy, howdy. I mean to tell you, man, she was almost crying by the end of that clip. He's killing us, Tom.
Yeah, and notice how none of those men around the table were nodding their heads in the CNN town hall when she said that Trump was Hitler. The room was deadly silence. Now, hello, it was filled with her supporters, and they were deadly silent. And so the reality is that they don't have themselves to sell. I've said this for decades. Socialism is never sold on the merits. It's sold on the demonization of the other side. That's her only game. I have my Fox op-ed that's out this week, and it's on tomdell.com, talks about the fact that she won't tell you what she wants to do because she wants to spend a ton of money, and that's how we got to inflation, and that's how she's going to hurt you. And so she knows that won't sell. And so what's she going to do? She's going to demonize Donald J. Trump, on and on and on. And yeah. I guess I'm an idiot for not believing in John Kelly, who no one else heard anything like he describes, but he's a bitter fool at this stage because he didn't get the way he wants what he wanted. There are even Pence's chief of staff says he's lying and talked about how when Kelly was chief of staff to Trump that he withheld information from Trump and embarrassed Trump, and then he got fired, and now he's just a bitter ego. But it tells you where the Democrats are.
Fear and loathing.
Yeah. What happened to Joy?
That went out the window the second the blue wall started to crumble.
Yeah, and again, so she cannot create her own momentum. You know, MSNBC, her PR firm, can, when she gets selected, can pump her up. When there's a convention, they can pump it up. It's a made-for-TV event. The debate, a made-for-TV event. But all they have now is her talking. And that's not a made-for-TV event. That's as David Axelrod said, a word salad city. And so she's in trouble. And so what do people in trouble do? They panic. What do panic politicians do? They engage in this vitriol. And just, if there's any listeners out there who want to vote for her, I ask you, how is it possible for her to unite America while she just indicted half of America, saying, as Hillary did, that essentially they're Nazi sympathizers? It's impossible for her to do that because she's already said half the country is evil. That's where we are.
Absolutely crazy. Well, absolutely crazy. Well, listen, we'll take a break. We'll come back. We've got more to get to, but very interesting, folks, as the political cycle turns. I mean, it's just not turning in her direction. You're watching and listening to Del Maccaro and Hook, Enlightened Dissent, and we'll be right back after this.
Welcome back, everyone, to Del Maccaro and Hook at Enlightened Dissent. Today, we are graced by the presence of a longtime friend of mine. I think, Devin, I've known you the better part of 20 years now. Yeah. Congressman Devin Nunes.
I don't want to date you, Tom, but I think we've known each other about 30 years.
Oh, okay. There you go. Devin,
I think the first time I remember meeting you was like early mid-90s at the California Republican Convention.
All right, there you go. Well, of course, Devin's gone on to great things since then. I'm still here. He is, of course, the chief executive officer of Trump Media and Technology Group, which, of course, has True Social, which, of course, you should be on. He also, in my view, is one of the most important leaders of the last 50 years in America. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm sure you are aware of what happened when Trump was president, the whole Russia scandal, and by that I mean their attempt to claim that that he was allied with Russia and exchanged information on and on. And Devin Nunes, in my judgment, stood up to that when few people on earth would have done that. So Devin, welcome to our show today. We're happy to have you here. We know we only have you for a minute, so I'm going to get right to the questioning if you don't mind.
Sure.
In my book, The Lessons of the American Civilization, I talk about the fact that government today is protecting itself from the American citizen. They want our money, but not our 2 cents. They want to stay entrenched. What did your experience in Washington tell you on that subject?
Well, just to cut to the heart of it, all of this, it all comes down to the Department of Justice. When you don't have kind of an impartial justice system, it leads to the breakdown of any government. And the governments that I used to work with over the years, when I put my old hat on as the House Intelligence Committee chairman, that, we used to go there and the justice departments would be totally corrupt, and we would sit there and work with them. And I remember even in Iraq, going to Iraq, trying to work with the judicial system there. Well, post Obama, or basically post Bush, Obama came in, especially in the second term, and they began to put in people who were totally unqualified at both the Department of Justice, the FBI, and in the court system. And that just expanded and kept expanding. Trump interrupted and kind of blew all that up. And what they did is they thought they had enough people in the Department of Justice and the FBI that they could actually take out a sitting president. And that's what they tried to do back in 2017 and 18. So everything, in my mind, there's lots of problems in government, as you know. But if Trump can win this election, which obviously, I hope that he will, the biggest challenge is going to be ripping out the Department of Justice by its roots, which includes the FBI. A lot of people forget that the FBI sits below the Department of Justice. It has to be ripped out, cleaned out, and good people need to be in there. And I don't mean Republicans or conservatives. I just mean people who want to follow the law. And when a politician, whether it's a president or the president's men, come in and say, well, we're going to target our opponent, i.e. Jack Smith, that we don't have those types of people. We need people in there who will stand up and say, no, Mr. Democrat, or no, Mr. Republican, we're not going to do that. In fact, I'm going to go public with this and make sure that everybody in the media and the press and the public knows that you are asking me to do something that should not be done. So look, I just cut to the chase there, but that's the problem. So if Trump loses, you're going to see gasoline get put on the fire. The courts are going to get worse. More crooks are going to be put in the Department of Justice, and the FBI is going to become more and more woke and useless.
Yeah.
So, and from the Department of Justice, you fix that, then everything else gets easier to fix, in my opinion.
So Devin, before we go away from that, I get asked all the time, so what does Trump do? And I agree with you 100% on everything you said and the need for different personnel. But is there a structural thing that can be done as well, other than just simply saying that Christopher Wray has to go and certainly Merrick Garland should be somewhere else?
Remember, under the Department of Justice, there are several divisions, and within those divisions, there are deputies that run those, and those are the ones that have to be replaced. And you probably should go, and I'm sure what they've done is they've backfilled. If you look at the next 4 or 5 below, whoever that deputy attorney general is within that division, those all have to be looked at, verified, to make sure that are these people that were they promoted because they are fair and they are fair-minded people that understand the law, or were they promoted because of essentially their allegiance to be willing to do what the Soviet-style, Marxist-style apparatus that was created by Obama, still run by Obama and his people, those have to be rooted out and totally destroyed.
Yeah.
They have to be eliminated. And that's so Tom, look, I can't tell you I'm not an attorney. I just have to deal with attorneys my whole life. But I can tell you that, look, there's probably 20 to 40 key positions that need to be filled not with Republicans, not with conservatives, but with people who are going to follow the law and not be afraid to stand up, so that we don't go back into this Obama created mess that we have at the justice system, within the Justice Department, that is destroying this country. It's ripping the country apart by its threads.
Yeah, Devin, Steve Hook here, and again, very thankful that you could join us today. So it sounds like what you're basically saying here is this DOD, FBI, probably even CIA to a degree, intel agencies, and certainly the DOD in large, root to stem, rip them out, and because we had this problem, back in the Army. All of a sudden, James Comey comes into play. And then he bags out, and then you got Rosenstein comes in, and they were all kind of playing from the same sheet music.
Well, they're all the same people. They were all friends. They're all buddies. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You got to root all those people out. And I think really, I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. It's the Department of Justice at all those levels, especially with the National Security Division, which oversees that's the enforcement mechanism for the FBI, for the CIA, for DOD. That's got to be cleaned out for sure. But if you do that, if you do it at the top and at the mid-level within the Department of Justice, I mean, clearly the FBI has to be redone at the top. But if you do all that, then I think what you'll see is a lot of people within the DOD and CIA and the other intelligence agencies that are out there that likely went into that role because they like to do the things to protect our country. They went it for the right reason. I worked with so many great people. And so maybe at the top levels, you got to figure that out, but you will give people support by knowing that there's a backstop at the Department of Justice. If people are asked to do things that are inappropriate in any intelligence agency or the DOD, that they're not going to face retribution, and that there's going to be penalties for people if they try to go back to this Obama era one party Marxist style system.
Yeah. Well, every time I look at Merrick Garland, I just remind myself, thank God he's not on SCOTUS. At least he's not on SCOTUS.
Yeah. But look, that's a good point. Let's talk about Merrick Garland. So he's clearly a bitter guy, had dreams of being on Supreme Court, probably dreamt of it back when he was, 10, 11, 12 years old. Always thought he was going to get there, played the political game, was nice to the Republican senators, was nice to the Democratic senators. And at the end of the day, Obama and company knew if they could get him in there, he'd be a total left winger, because he would be, like you see with a lot of these justices, even some of the Republicans, I have to admit, that have gotten on there, they can be moved by the Washington, D.C. establishment media. They get pushed at the cocktail parties. They get all of those things happen to those justices and on the federal bench in the Washington, D.C. area. You see that happen to so many. So Garland is a guy who essentially wanted revenge, and that's why they knew if they put him in there, you had enough Republican senators who would go along with it, because he had this great stellar record. But he's not the only problem there. The larger problem is the Deputy Attorney General named Lisa Monaco, somebody who I've known for a very long time. She is the deputy. She's the engineer. She's the one behind the scenes. What was the old term in the Nixon days? I think they were called the plumbers. She's the plumber. She works directly with Susan Rice and Valerie Jarrett. Who are they? If you don't know who they are, those are Obama's top lieutenants. This is how Obama was able to keep control over the Biden administration. And quite frankly, it's the whole reason why Biden dropped out of the race, because nobody talks about this, but they should. Hunter Biden is extremely vulnerable, and so is Joe Biden. So is his whole family. And all they had, I'm sure at the end of the day, because Biden, I think, didn't know exactly what was going on towards the end, but his wife and others did. And I'm sure that a conversation was had that went something like, would you like us to look into this? Or do you think maybe Biden might get out of the race? And he got out of the race eventually. Took him longer than they wanted him to get out of the race, because Obama did not want Kamala Harris. He wanted to be able to pick the person, but I think they wanted somebody other than Harris. And now they've got themselves into this position.
So they painted themselves into that corner, didn't they?
Exactly.
Basically, what we're talking about here, Devin, is this is the deep state. This is what you're looking at when we talk about the deep state. This is it. You mentioned Susan Rice, Valerie Jarrett. That's the president for all intents and purposes. It's a cabal really that's running the show. It seems like.
Yeah, there's lots of definitions for that deep state. I mean, I get that all the time. What is it? Does it exist? People have different. I mean, but the bottom line is it's really Obama's people over the last since 2009. What has that been? 15 for the last 15 years that have been seated throughout our government, but most dangerously in the FBI. But look, I mean in the DOJ. But look, it's starting to have impacts across the whole government. No one would have ever thought that the Department of Defense would look like it does today, where we can't get people to sign up. We have great people that are leaving the military. Many of the people that I worked with in my past that were very capable, qualified people who here they are at the peak of their career, getting ready to move into a position of power, after you get in 15, 20 years. And they're quitting. They've quit. A lot of the best people have left. And we have great warriors that learned a lot in Afghanistan and in Iraq and through all these wars, whether you agree with them or not. They experience brings wisdom and brings judgment. And a lot of those people have left the military, and it's been replaced by, you have to worship at either the what do you call the green, the green scam. So you got to worship the green gods in combination with the woke gods, or you will not move up in the military.
I want to grab some. Tom, I hope you bear with me. I just kind of want to grab some screen grabs. One of these generals that was great in the field and has all of a sudden become a political hack is Kelly. Kelly, of course, former chief of staff to President Donald Trump. He's another embittered guy. I notice all these people that are bad-mouthing Trump were all fired by Trump. Strange the way that works. But Kelly came out and basically said, he told me that he wants generals like Adolf Hitler had. Trump has vehemently denied that. His people have come out, General Keith Kellogg, also General Anthony Tata. They both basically came out and said that's BS. One of them said he's beclowned himself, Kelly has. But this is their October surprise, and I think that is pretty I think that speaks volumes as to where they are concerning their allegiance to the country. They've decided to make a political decision. So now you got a DOD directive that comes out and gives the DOD lethal force to use against American citizens. RFK Jr. tweeted about this the other day and said it's ironic that Kamala and Joe, well, mainly Kamala, is saying that Trump wants to use military against citizens when they just signed a DOD directive for the first time granting that authority. Look at some of these screen grabs and see what you think, Devin.
Yeah, look, I think, as it relates to Kelly, he's, very similar to Merrick Garland. These guys have big egos. I believe that Kelly was initially a Trump supporter, but he, because he was at the highest levels of the military, served during during those Obama years, he got used to how to work the DC establishment area. And because Trump is not a DC figure, because he was under attack by our own Justice Department that we just covered and our FBI, illegally, by the way, that was everything that happened during that Russia hoax was illegal. People should have went to jail. Dozens of people should have went to jail for what the Department of Justice and FBI did to a sitting president. It was all a scam.
A lot of people did go to jail, but it was all Trump's people.
Yeah, exactly. The right people didn't go to jail, but that gets to the rot that's occurring in the country. So Kelly's kind of the same way. He got in there, got the shit beat out of him. And at the end of the day, I mean, I knew him. He knew what was going on. He knew the Department of Justice and FBI were corrupt. He knew it. And I think just over time, they worked him. And as you know, they're able to manipulate, and you get The Atlantic, which sounds like a really important magazine. No, it's owned by billionaire, wife of the deceased Steve Jobs. These are just all of these news media outlets are owned by billionaires now who use them to play politics. And this was you're exactly right, Steve. This was the October surprise that basically crumbled in their face because, they just can't help themselves. They have to go to such an absurd level that it just becomes not believable. And the American people they tried so many hoaxes and have launched so many conspiracy theories that people just don't believe them anymore because they're so outlandish.
If this goes according to the way it looks like it's going to go, we might be celebrating President Trump's second term. And if that happens, do you think that he has the people surrounding him now? And do you think some deals are being made now to get some of this rot out of the DOD, the DOJ, and the rest of it?
Well, the advantage that President Trump has now is that he really knows the issues because he's lived and breathed them now for the last 8 years as president. Then outside of the presidency, he got a firsthand look, has the experience of what a corrupt Justice Department can do. So he understands that has to be cleaned up. Look, what we're seeing is remarkable. This is the biggest political movement in the last century. And I think will go down as one of the biggest political movements in United States history and in the whole world of politics. We've just never seen anything like this. And the good thing is that the bad apples have essentially weeded themselves out because the ones that were bad couldn't wait to go out and tweet something out how they're not affiliated with the Trump administration, or they went to Facebook, or they went to Instagram, or they went on to, name the fake news network and say, oh, please. Cause they all thought that Trump was gone after 2020. They thought he was finished. So the easy part now for, look, we have to run through the tape. And I can tell you that President Trump he's running through the tape. He's doing at least 2 events a day, if not more. My guess he's going to end up doing 4 or 5 events in a day. So he's going to run all the way through the tape to win this election. But the easy part is that the bad apples have essentially weeded themselves out because they stupidly went out and put all this stuff all over social media and did interviews. So because they wanted to ingratiate themselves, they thought the Trump movement, the MAGA movement was over. So let myself be positioned to go back to the Bush-Romney style years. And those people all weeded themselves out. So there's a lot of good people that have been working with the president over the last 4 years. And he knows who the good ones are and who the loyal ones are. And well, I appreciate that. I run a public company, so I'm kind of out of the politics, but I still enjoy talking about the politics.
There you go. Well, we do thank you for joining us today, Devin. And I know you've got to go do a hit, so we're going to let you roll. But God, I hope we can get you back here. It's an honor to speak to, at one time, the second most hated man inside the Beltway. As I know, as the House chair on the Intel committee, boy, oh boy, they were coming at you with long knives. I'm sure that hasn't let up too much, but we appreciate your time today, Devin.
Thanks a lot, Steve. I appreciate it. And thank you, Tom. Great to be with you both.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Tom Del Beccaro. That's Steve Hook. This is Enlightened Dissent. Please send this link along to your friends. We had a great segment there with my friend Devin Nunes. He was unleashed and very thoughtful. But we're on, of course, YouTube at Del Beccaro and Hook, and also at Rumble. And we hope to be in more places, and will be in more places soon. In this shorter segment, we want to take up a little look at the media. In our opening segment, Steve once again abused the audience by making us listen to MSNBC. Guilty once again, but you got to see where there are. But amazingly, the media did a couple of things, three different things that are kind of new. CNN was pretty tough in its town hall with Kamala Harris. But Steve, the LA Times and the Washington Post decided to not endorse. What's your take?
Yeah, they're sitting this one out. Yeah. Well, Tom, I've been doing the political thing for a better part of 2 decades, in broadcasting for over 40 years. The last time the Washington Post did not endorse a candidate was 36 years ago. I was talking with my wife about this, and she goes, well, why wouldn't they just endorse him? Because apparently the Washington Post editorial staff is in conniptions over this. They're all angry at Bezos for not jumping on board. And I said, well, you know what? What little credibility they have left, they don't want to lose it by endorsing a candidate that is circling the drain, and leaving skid marks. I mean, it's not going well. So you've got the Washington Post and the LA Times, the biggest 2 papers in liberal land, are sitting on the sidelines. Stunning, an indictment, really. I don't think that's a stretch to say it's an indictment.
Okay, but so I got, if you read their non-endorsements or the talk around it, some people are saying that they just want to change their position, and maybe this isn't the endorsement game isn't what they should be doing. Are you buying that at all? Apparently not.
Well, I'm buying it in as much as it's a great fallback position. But when it's the first time in 36 years, and we're 2 weeks out of a general election, that kind of hits like a wet thud. I mean, I just don't buy that, really.
You know what? That's interesting that you said it that way, because if they had said this in March, that we're not going to be doing that, right?
Yeah.
But 11 days to go, or whatever it is, 9 days to go, whenever they came out with that, and now suddenly they're deciding they're not in the endorsement game, when I thought that's what the whole point of a newspaper was, that here's our endorsement and here's why. I mean, the Chronicle didn't endorse me when I ran for U.S. Senate. The LA Times endorsed Kamala Harris when I ran against her. Now, maybe that's just because I'm a really bad candidate, but yeah. So where do they go with this?
Yeah.
Look, I would love to think that the Washington Post and the LA Times were going to start being analytical instead of just partisan. But I'm not believing that any more than, but let's talk about CNN for a minute there, because he pressed her, and Gloria Vanderbilt's son,
Anderson Cooper,
was pretty pointed at a couple of times. And then in the after effects, he talked about how there were those on the left just ripping him on social media. And his response on air at CNN was, "This isn't MSNBC," which I thought was the best line of the whole night.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you what. As far as I'm concerned, the 3 greatest ass kickings rather in the last couple of weeks has been Brett Baer's interview of Kamala, Georgia beating the crap out of the Texas Longhorns, and Anderson Cooper beating the crap out of Kamala. I think Anderson Cooper was a little bit more reticent towards her after he watched that Brett Baer interview. You can't have watched that and then softball her, because then you would lose any and all credibility. It does sound like CNN's trying to tack a little bit more towards the center, but Tom, as well as I do, including Vanderbilt's son, they all want Kamala, but I think they've all just resigned to the fact that, wow, we really screwed the pooch with this candidate. The funny thing is the polls show that if Biden were still in, he would be doing better. So, oh boy,
I think those polls are what's the word I'm looking for? Nostalgic. And I do want to mention, folks, that it turns out that there is a West Coast team that is ranked #1 in the country.
Oh, right, God, here we go.
Whatever that partisan comment related to the Bulldogs was, we'll just leave it as partisan. But I think I think they just can't believe it themselves. I mean, she's been there 9 months. I'm sorry, 3 months. She has gone multiple interviews. Why can't she say, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3? How is that hard? Especially since today they came out with a to-do list, which has like 10 things on them. Now, I don't want any of those 10 things to occur. At least that's my memory of reading it. But I don't get this. So to me, there just seems that this campaign has been really bad, in addition to her being really bad.
Yeah. And the funny thing, Tom, to get to that, and I know we don't have much time here, but I'll just say this. I think part of the reason that she can't articulate what she's going to do is because their base is so fractious. She's got to appeal to Michigan, the Michigan Muslim vote. So she's got to be very careful about that. But then she's got to be careful with the Northeastern Jewish vote. But then she's got to be careful with the black vote. What's going on with the Hispanic vote? They have done this. They have balkanized their base to the point where you can't be specific on anything because of it, because no matter what you say, you're going to piss off a different segment of your own base. Pretty pathetic.
Yeah, and I think their probably internal polling shows that, and also that's where their panic is. And she has no charm. A young Bill Clinton maybe could have charmed his way through this particular thing, but to me, at the end of the day, she's losing young men, and she especially among black voters, young black men. Everything you look at says they want opportunity.
Yeah,
they want an opportunity in life, and yet she doesn't have an opportunity message. There's nothing that said. Yes, she says, "Oh, we're gonna if you start up a business." But okay, let's say you deduct 50,000 because you started 25 because you started up a business. That means you have to have the 25,000. So the number of people to whom that applies is next to nothing. So when you see some of these interviews, they're going to say, "Well, there's nothing she has, and there's nothing in it for me," right? But also, you also see a lot of people who remember that they did better under Trump. It just happens to be so. And so, but I do like that analysis that they have so fractured themselves that they're afraid to say anything that would put them in a bad stead versus one of the other groups. And then the question becomes, well, how do you get out from underneath that? And I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to find out soon, because what happens.
The answer either, Tom.
You know what happens in 2 weeks? The start of the 2028 presidential campaign.
Oh God, here we go again.
And look, he's going to be the shortest term president in history. And here's what I mean by that. Because normally you would wait until after the midterm and they'd be a lame duck. That was the olden days, 30 years ago. But now with technology and on and on and on and on, you don't even get that much. You get about a year to do what you want to do. What will be interesting if Trump wins is how he acts, knowing he can't get reelected. How much of what Devin talked about today, where he talked about the need to clean things up, because Trump's got nothing to lose. Golda Meir used to say, if you have to do tough things, do them all at once in the beginning, and then by the next election, the good of that will be obvious to people. Trump needs to do that. So where are we? We are 9 days from an election. You have to get out there and vote. It's pretty simple, isn't it? Elections go to the people that show up. And we have 9 days to show up, and don't rely on in same day voting. Look what that did in Arizona, where they had trouble printing ballots. I've already sent my ballot in. I think you should do the same. Steve, why don't you close this out?
Yeah, I will. I would just say, if you are in a state that has early voting, and there's some confusion about this because, like in California, you mailed your ballot in. I'm in New Jersey. In New Jersey, early voting is open. You still go to a voting booth, folks. You still go to the booth. You still pull the curtain. You're not mailing it in and dropping it in the mailbox. Bank those votes while you can. And we look forward to, I think we're going to know a lot more a week from today when we do our next show. Until then, make sure you follow us, Del Macaro and Hook. You can find us on YouTube and Rumble. And until then, Tom and everybody else, goodbye.
Take care, please.